So why can't I say I was given a book in French, Spanish, Italian and German? Well, this is because in these languages the indirect object pronoun cannot become the subject of the sentence, whereas in English it can.
The passive voice is used when you want to place more emphasis on the thing or person that experienced the action, rather than the subject that performs the action. For example, more emphasis is placed on the cat which performed the action in the active voice, whereas more emphasis is placed on the milk in the passive voice. It can only be used with transitive verbs, which are verbs which are followed by a direct object.
The difference between the active voice and the passive voice is that in the active voice, the word order is subject, verb, direct object, whereas in the passive voice, the word order is direct object, auxiliary, past participle, subject. In the passive voice, the subject of the active voice becomes the agent of the passive voice. In turn, the direct object of the active voice becomes the subject of the passive voice.
In English, there are two forms of the passive voice. In the active voice, you would say, John gave me a book. In the passive voice, however, you could say, the book was given to me by John, where the direct object has to become the subject. Other languages follow this rule too. However, you could also say, I was given a book by John, changing the indirect object, which is to me, into the subject. This is not applicable in French, Spanish, Italian and German.
In French, in the active voice, you would say, Jean m'a donné un livre. In the passive voice, you would say, un livre m'a été donné par Jean. But you wouldn't say, j'ai été donné un livre par Jean.
In Spanish, it's not wrong to use the passive, it is just limited to the language used in newspapers or historical documents. However, it is hardly ever spoken. To create the passive in Spanish, you use the verb ser plus the past participle, or you can use se plus the third person to form it. In this case, we use the verb dar in the past participle.
In Italian, in the active voice, you would say, John mi ha dato un libro. In the passive voice, you would say, un libro mi è stato dato per John. But you wouldn't say, io sono stato dato un libro per John.
In the passive voice, in German, you would say, ein Buch wurde mir gegeben. However, German being German, it is possible to put the indirect object first and say, mir wurde ein Buch gegeben, because the verb geben takes the dative case. Therefore, you should always be wary of what case you need when thinking about using the passive voice in German.